Hello to everyone. I'm here to present you today my collection of mechanical calculators. So, what are mechanical calculators? Many people don't know it, but for about 100 years they have been the only way to do automatic calculations. These are all from between the 1900s to the 1970s, after which time the new electronic calculators came on the market, and these were somehow not useful anymore. They are heavy, they are complicated, and so they were forgotten by humanity. Most people nowadays don't even know they ever existed. So that's the reason why I would like to show you how they work. Why do I have so many? Well, of course I love them, but that's not the only reason. It's because I'm a math teacher in a Waldorf school, and in the middle school, in this type of school, we don't use any electronic calculators. But still, we start to do calculations which are a little complicated and which, if done by hand, would take a lot of time. So I decided to do this experiment this year, and I bought a lot of them, as you can see. I introduced them to my students. I taught them how to use them, and I realize now that they are not obvious to use. They are not so automatic as it would be with an electronic calculator, that I input a number, I input the second number, I have the sum, the multiplication, or whatever. These need to think. You need to think to be able to use them, and therefore I think it's a very good thing for school if you have a situation like mine where I cannot or I don't want to use electronic calculators in the middle school, because the children still learn something about them, about math, about numbers in general, and also I have to add that they really started to love them. They got fun, each one has its own. I cannot change them because everyone wants the one he had at the beginning, because they are really confident with them. They know how to use them, and so they like the color, because as you can see, they're not all the same. They don't look the same. They all look different a little bit. They're all different types. And, well, I bought them all from second-hand shops and online second-hand shops, because they're not produced anymore since about 50 years. And almost all of them, I had to fix them because they were usually blocked, because the old oil became gum or something, and the gear wheels don't turn anymore. But I could clean them, put some oil in, and most of them, all of them actually, started to work again. It's really difficult to break them. The main problem I had a few times was that they had been disassembled before by someone who forgot how to reassemble them correctly. And at that point you might have a problem, some things might not work, and you have to figure out how to fix them, and to figure out especially where the wrong gear wheel was reassembled in the wrong way, so that you can put it right, and then they will work again. And I could fix at least 3 of them had reassembly problems. They had been reassembled incorrectly, but most of them they just needed a little bit of cleaning in the inside and a little bit of oil to make them work smoothly again. So what I can add is the fact that there's different types. As you can see, I will now present quickly, give an overview of the different types that we have on the market, and well, we can start. So the first 4 you see here, they're all Swedish in production. 3 are from the brand Original Odhner, which was the guy who invented this type of calculator, which is a pinwheel calculator. About in the 1880s they were invented. They were used a lot. They were copied in the subsequent years, and the 4th is just a Multo Addo, which is very similar in its working. It's just another brand. It's still from Sweden as well. Anyway, how do they work? I input a number, whatever, 3, 4, 6. Oh, sorry, I have to zero the counters. I will explain everything. I will do other videos where I show in details how they work, how their inner working is, and how they must be used to do all the operations. Anyway, 3, 4, 6, I input the number here, then I turn once the crank, and the number appears here. Then I input another number, 522, I turn, and here I have the sum of the two numbers, 868. If I want to subtract the number, I input the number to be subtracted from 868, I turn the crank the other way around. And here I have the subtraction of the two numbers. So it's actually very easy for sums and subtraction. It's very easy to use them. And they all pretty much work the same way. Then we have this Hammond-Manus, which is a very special feature I will show in the videos, in the future videos, which looks the same, but is actually quite different from the other four. It has a different inner working. Then we have the Monroe type. You see there's 5 of them basically, which is a different type. It still works the same way. I will show in a second how they work, but they basically are a different display, a different way. They have advantages and disadvantages compared to the other ones. Anyway, what I'd like to put into focus here is that this one is a Monroe of the 1930s, I guess, and you can see it still looks like a royal thing with green in the background, the red number, the red buttons, and different colored buttons. It looks like a noble machine. Then you have this one that is 1940s. It's still green with red buttons, but it looks a little bit more cheap, I would say. And then we have these ones, which are of the 1950s, which are brown. It's really become a working machine. So it's a machine for the workers. So from something that was really for special people who had the money to buy them, we go to these models, which are basically for everyone. And even the color, okay, 50s style is a little bit like that. I disassembled them all, they're all the same inside. It's just the outside that changes to make them look according to the decade they were produced and used for. Anyway, how do these work? So, I input the number here, 456. I turn the crank and the number appears here. I enter the next number, 479. I turn the crank clockwise and I have the sum here. Very similar to the other one. If I now want to subtract a number, let's say 521, I turn the crank anti-clockwise. And here I have the subtraction. So basically they work the same way. I will show the other operations in further videos. This is a Lindström, which from the outside looks very similar to those. This is a very old machine, I guess at the earliest it's 931, probably 929, because that's the years they were produced. After that they were not produced anymore. It looks similar, but it's actually a little bit different in the workings inside, and I will show this difference. Then we go to the Facit type. Facit invented this type of calculator, I don't know exactly in which decade, but anyway, I guess around 1930s, 1940s, maybe a little bit earlier, I'm not sure. They still work about the same way, just the difference is how I input the number, you see? Here I push these buttons on the keyboard and the number appears here. Then I turn the crank and the numbers show up in the upper register. Then I put the second number, I turn the crank again, and here I have the sum. Here I always have to reset the input register. Now, if I want to subtract the number, I enter the number to be subtracted, I turn the crank anti-clockwise, and here I have the subtraction. So they basically work again the same way. Just a different outlook. This is a Precisa, which is a Swiss brand, which basically works the same way, but I guess it's newer, early, not so old. In fact, it sounds much more quietly. You can hear. And this is also a bit ergonomic handle. You can almost not hear it. You enter the second number, and it's very, very quiet machine. So another design, I guess 1950s or something. Then we have the comptometer. Comptometers were produced, I guess, I think I remember from the early 1900s up to the 1970s. Why they were produced? They can do additions very easily, subtraction quite easily, multiplication quite easily, and very difficult to do divisions. But they had a great advantage. They were the fastest calculator that probably has ever existed, even today. Because for doing the sums, I'm only talking about sums, additions. Because I can input the number using more fingers. So I input 344, it appears straight away there. I input the next number to be summed, to be added, and I have the addition directly without having to turn any crank or whatever. This only handle we have here, it's just to reset the output register. So to do a lot of sums, people were trained to use 10 fingers, and they could really work very fast because you could push more than one number at a time. So let's say I want to sum all these numbers. Straight away I have the sum here. That would have taken at least 20 seconds with an electronic calculator, because in the electronic calculator I can only input one number at a time. Instead here I can input 3 or 4 or 5 numbers at a time if I use two hands. So a very, very fast calculator to do sums, to do additions. Then we have the Curta calculator. This is kind of a historical and mythical calculator because it has always been the smallest calculator that has ever existed. So to input a number, I just put it here, and then, I'm sorry, it's difficult to do with one hand. Anyway, I turn the crank on the top, and the number will appear here. Now to do a sum, I add another number, I turn the crank again, and here I will have the sum. Now it doesn't really work because I had other numbers already input and I didn't reset the output register. If I want to subtract a number, I insert the number, I push the crank a little bit up, you see there's a red line appearing, and I turn the same way, and this is subtraction. So a very handy and pocket calculator. They are, amongst all these calculators, these are the most expensive, because this is a very complicated machine. It has 600 moving parts inside, so it really takes time, takes a lot of effort to produce it, and they're still really valued today. Then we have the Ediator type of calculator. Sorry, I have to reset it quickly. Okay. And here, this is a pocket calculator, very practical to do additions and subtractions, because to do addition, I just insert my number, 546, and now I want to add 323, and here I have the sum, the addition straight away, 859. If I want to subtract a number now, I turn it around, I have this line subtraction, I can subtract 445, and here I have the result of this subtraction. So you see, it came with a pen, it came with a little pouch to put it in. Very practical, very thin to do addition and subtractions. Not so practical to do multiplications and divisions, but to have it in the pocket and do. You see, you have 8-digit size, so you could do 8-digit sum additions, which by head, by brain, by thinking about it, it's not that easy. Whereas here, it's just a mechanical think. You just have to follow the two rules you need to know, and then it just works perfectly. Okay. Now we can go to the electromechanical calculators, which basically work the same way as the mechanical calculators, but instead of having to turn a crank by hand, it just works automatic. So I input a number. These are two Marchants, which is an American brand. They are basically the same. The only difference is this one has 8-digit, this one has 10 digits, so it's a little bit bigger. So I insert the number here, I press plus, it's automatically added. In the register, I insert the next number, I push plus, and I have the sum straight away. If I want to do a subtraction, I insert the number to be subtracted, I push minus, and I have the result in the register. If I want to do multiplication, let's say I want to do 467 by 34. So here I have this side line of numbers, I do 34. Oh, sorry, I have to put it this way, okay. Okay, through 467 by 34. 43, okay, I did it the other way around. Anyway, this is the result of 467 by 43. What is interesting here is we can understand how division works, or not understand, but see how division is done also on the hand-run machines. If I wanted to do 345, I have to add it to the system, I have to reset the counter register, and now I have to put the number I want to divide by, let's say let's do 27, and now look what happens when I press the division button. Isn't it fantastic? So it's done the division all by itself. with no need to do any thinking. And when I do the other videos where I will show you how to do this kind of operations on the hand machines, you will understand why this is fantastic. Because when you have to do it by hand, you have to think a lot. Whereas this type of calculator was able to do it all by itself without any further thinking by the user. And this is the result, 12.77777, etc. So to go to the last type, this is a Precisa calculator, which is, again, the Swiss brand we've seen before. And this is more a calculator for accountants, because it basically just does sums and subtractions. But what it does, it doesn't show the result anywhere, it prints the result. So let's say I want to do 45 plus 56 plus 89 plus 486. I can add as many as I want, and when I want the result, I push this button, and here the result is printed on the paper. So very useful for accountants. I only have one. This I didn't buy. I actually found it at my parents' home because they were accountants and they've been using these machines back, I think, up to the 1980s. And I show it, I only have this one, but there's also manual models where instead of having an electric motor doing all the cranking, you had a hand crank on the side where you could pull it down and do the printing on the paper. Okay, that's about it for my first presentations. I will do other videos where I show the mathematical principles with which we can do, by only having at our disposal sums, additions and subtractions, we can actually do also multiplications, divisions and square roots. And I will also do other videos where I show the inner workings of these machines, and I will do also some videos where I go into the details on how to use the various different models that you see here on display. Okay, that's about it for this first video. I thank you for listening and I wish you a nice day. Bye bye.